In this video, we're going to talk about the idea of alkyl halide classification, and this is just an introduction before we actually to give you an understanding of some of the terminology with respect to alkyl halides, and we're going to cover just the basic mechanism of substitution reactions versus elimination reaction before obviously going into our SN1 and SN2, E1, E2 reactions. So the first halide that I want you guys to know is the idea of a methyl halide, right? And we call this a methyl halide. Again, a halide comes from the word halogen, and halogens are in or fluorine or chlorine or bromines, etc. So we have a methyl halide. You're also going to see what we call primary halides, and a primary halide simply on any given carbon has two hydrogens attached. So we call this a primary halide, right? So again, on the carbon, we have a halogen, obviously, and two hydrogens attached. So that's what we call a primary halide. Another one you'll get used to is the idea of a secondary halide. And it's the idea here that on a given carbon, one hydrogen is present. So this is what we call a secondary halide. And as you could imagine, the fourth one is what we call a tertiary halide. So on any given carbon, essentially, we have no hydrogens. So this is essentially a CH3. Again, on a given carbon, we have no hydrogen. This is what we call a tertiary halide. Right, so those are the four different types of halides we have in organic chemistry. Now, let's talk about the idea of substitution versus elimination, right? So typically in organic chemistry 1 especially, you learn the basic reactions, and really there's only really two that you're really going to learn, and it's the idea of substitution versus elimination, right? So for substitution, right, we have any given molecule. In this case, I'm given a random molecule, right? And we have this X here, and this is where X is equal to any halogen. So a substitution reaction simply says that I take a nucleophile and I replace the nucleophile with a halogen. Right? So we're simply breaking down the basics, and we're saying that for a substitution reaction, we're simply replacing the X, in this case, as any halogen with a nucleophile. Now, for the last one that I want to talk about briefly is the idea of elimination reaction. And an elimination reaction, in this case again, I'm going to give a random molecule. Again, X is any halogen. Elimination reaction is different in that we actually take a base. So in the substitution, we took a nucleophile. In an elimination reaction, we take a base and take off the hydrogen adjacent to the R group, or in this case, the halogen. We take the hydrogen adjacent on the adjacent carbon next to the R group, or in this case, the halogen that we're going to displace. So we take the hydrogen off. Essentially, from here, we form a double bond, and then subsequently, we displace the X group. So you can see it's a 3-series reaction essentially. So essentially the product that we have is a double bonded carbon. And we get the X has been charged. Plus we get the base and the hydrogen that it took off. So in order for us to get comfortable with SN1, SN2 reactions, must be able to tell the difference between elimination and substitution, right? Again, elimination Major difference is that it takes off a hydrogen adjacent to the carbon that has the R group that is going to leave essentially.